Today we're traveling to the artistic hillside town of Frome in Somerset, England, where ceramicist Richard Pomeroy and his wife, travel writer Helena Drysdale, have created a soulful countryside retreat more than 20 years in the making. Every room tells a story, from Richard's handcrafted ceramics nestled into daily life throughout the home, to evocative artworks and found objects collected from around the world, including pieces from the Democratic Republic of Congo, St. Petersburg, and beyond. This is a true artist's home, textured, expressive, and deeply personal, shaped not only by Richard's own practice, but also by his marriage to Helena and the creative paths of their children. So come with us as we step inside this beautifully layered English countryside home and discover the story Richard and Helena have built. To watch their full episode ad-free, scan the QR code on screen or click the join button below.
Hi, Homeworthy. My name's Richard Pomeroy, and this is my wife, Helena Drysdale. Welcome to our home.
Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
My name's Richard Pomeroy. I'm a potter, and I live in Bruton in Somerset in England. Welcome to my home. We moved into Bruton about 23 years ago. Our kids were getting to school age, and we didn't think it was going to be just right for our kids to be educated in London. So we came and looked all over, actually, Bath and round Frome and here, for a house, and we walked into this one at the end of the day. So we'd seen, 5 or 6 houses that day. Walked into this one and we just fell in love with it straight away. And in fact, as we were walking through the front door, we just looked at each other and said, this is it. And actually when we bought it, it was covered in very, very dark wallpaper. Everywhere was dark wallpaper. And Wendy, the previous owner, loved her interior design, but her taste was completely different from ours. So we did have to change every square inch. The people who moved us in, the furniture removal guys, came in and they started tearing up the carpet. It was us with our 2 little children, okay? And they started tearing up the carpet and they said, look, this carpet is so unhygienic, we're taking it out for you, and just don't ask, because actually it was soaked with dog pee, and really they did us a great favour. That was the beginning of the fact that we realised that we had to change everything in the house, from the ceilings to the walls to the floor. And we did get on with it because it's interior work and it's not listed. We were able to just get on with it straight away, and I'm quite practical. And so is my wife. And so we started ourselves, but we got people in and we had a lot of people working in the house, changing really everything. Repainting the walls, redoing the floors, taking out shag pile carpet, which has been put up the walls of the bathroom, for instance. And the levels in this room, in the kitchen, there were at least 2 levels. And you sort of tripped over unless you got used to them. So we changed an awful lot, and we felt that the house needed to have more light, so we made windows bigger. We changed the windows from having an enormous number of glazing bars to just having large panes of glass. And we really like to have a lot of light coming into the house. And that's one of the advantages of living in a place like this, is that there is a lot of light. There are gardens all around the house, and a lot of sun comes in throughout the day. There are windows from east, west, south and north, all facing out into the sun. And it really works for us, this. So this is our entrance hall. There are a lot of things that I've got as well over the years. This is by David Hiscock, a photographer, and it's a photograph of myself and Helena just after we got married. And these are photographs by someone called David Partner of our children. And I think that sort of having some family stuff is really nice in a house, and have some things that, you know, our children are now grown up and they've left home, but we see them every day. And this is us when we just met. And that's us in Devon, Helena and I in Devon. And that's a painting of Devon that I painted back in 1995 or so, I suppose. I loved the colour there. And I hope I've got the colour sort of sense that I had as a painter into my pots. That colour is such a crucial part of life. So when we bought this house 23 years ago, we bought it from a man, Peter, who had been an antique dealer. And he'd bought stuff from all over the country and sold it in an antique shop in Bruton High Street here. He's left a lot of things in the house that he'd put in. This is something he must have found somewhere and thought it would fit perfectly here, and indeed it does. It's a 19th century stained glass, and it would have been possibly a front door. And isn't it lovely with the griffins up at the top and the bowls of fruit and these wonderful classical vases filled with plants and these little motifs of flowers. In the 19th century, there was a real obsession with stained glass. They loved stained glass doors and stained glass in the windows. And when we open the door here and get the front door, you can see that this too is stained glass, and this is original to the house, which was built, this bit that we're in now, was built in 1860 by the doctor. And these colours are really stupendous, actually. They're a sweet little motif at the top here of a bird. And look at the colours, the orange and the purple and the blue and the red, yellow. Really, it's really spectacular, actually. So my father used to have an antiques business. He'd buy antiques in the 1960s or 70s in England and sell them in Italy. He used to go over in an old van and bluff his way through all the customs. And this is one of the clocks he bought. And it's got a wooden, it's not actually working at the moment, but it's got a wooden shaft to the pendulum. It's a very special clock, absolutely lovely thing, and rings really beautifully when it's working. This is by my sister-in-law, Helena Drysdale. She's an artist. She's lives around here actually now. And these are the chakras from the top of the head to the bottom of the spine. One of these floods wrecked an enormous amount of timber in the house. You know, it rots away, and actually all these floorboards are new. And the original staircase rotted it away. And in the 60s, the guys who had the house at the time ripped it all out and put these in. And actually they look very spectacular. You do miss that flow through from the hall straight into the other regions of the house, because they've taken away what would have been a doorway here. We put the bookcases in, and my wife is a writer, Helena Drysdale, and so the house is full of books, masses of books. And if we go up here, you can see a whole library on the stairs, which we felt made the staircase much more habitable and much more fun. Welcome to our sitting room. It's a beautiful day, so the sun's pouring in, which is really lovely. This is a chandelier that my grandmother bought, as I was saying earlier. Probably actually an 18th century chandelier. It really is nice, and it's one of a pair. There's another one in the dining room next door. Most of the paintings in this room are by me. I went through a phase of making body prints, which means you cover the canvas in wet paint and then you lie down in it. And you leave an impression of yourself and your clothes. And I found it really inspiring and used it in all sorts of contexts and ways. And you can see the emphasis on flowers and nature. This is a sculpture by a friend of mine, Andrew Sabin. It's called Thumbnail, and you can see why. It's a rather amazing thing. And he's squidged pipe together and screwed it together. You can see the screws, and then sanded it all down and filled it with a filler that has colour and pigment in it. It's rather extraordinary. This is a crucifix that my aunt would have bought in Portugal. It's really special. It's all made of bone and ivory, and is probably from the 17th century, 18th century. It's as I was explaining, I've got ancestors who love to have things and buy them, and so I inherited an awful lot of things, and so did my wife Helena, and all the valuable things were sold by previous generations, which is probably a good thing because it's a bore to have things which need a lot of insurance and stuff. But this, for instance, is a Roman statue, a little bronze, of a swimmer. Quite unusual, and it's designed to be seen like that. But these are all tourist pieces from Italy that my parents would have bought when they went out there doing their antique dealing. This is Chinese ceramics. My mother's father collected Chinese ceramics, and there are some of his things here. These figurines from China. The ones behind are African, and I bought that one I bought both of them in Rwanda, but they're from the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. And this one is a really amazing shaman figure, covered in studs and nails, and a really extraordinary thing. These are some teacups. My wife Helena, when she was a child, she expressed a lot of interest in teacups, so she always got teacups for birthday presents. And here they all are. Years and years of her birthday presents when she was a child. The piece of furniture here was, I think, built by my grandfather. Yeah. And they're little fleur-de-lis all the way around. So he would have painted it and built it. And it's a really splendid thing, painted in green. But the glass is really nice. It's old glass, and it's slightly sort of puckered and reflects the light in a really lovely way. This is another sculpture by my friend Andrew. And this is a three-legged toad by Edoardo Palozzi, a sculptor from London. It's just a plaster cast. And my own love of pottery means that I've got a lot of things by people who I've come across. And this is Kevin de Choisy, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago. But there's quite a lot of ceramics by him. And then quite a lot by my daughter, Tallulah, who is the person responsible for my own obsession with ceramics. These are by her and these. And we'll see a lot more as we go around the house. But the ceiling is really beautiful. It's the original coving, and with a little gold strip all the way along. It's painted gold, and that is apparently how it would have been when they first decorated this house. The fireplace we put in I found this in Frome Reclamation. It's marble and does the job perfectly. And probably exactly the sort of thing that was in this house when it was built. This house went through quite a long period of being in very bad condition. Well, the whole site actually is interesting. This house is built on old foundations, and the foundations of the first building are kind of 16th century, really old. And it was the townhouse for one of the local big estates. They'd come in here, they'd sell their cattle in the market, do their business, and this was the townhouse. But at some point, it collapsed. And so the doctor built the house that you can actually see now on top of old foundations. So there isn't a right angle in the ground plan anywhere. I had a corner cabinet with a right angle back, of course, and there isn't a single wall that it would go on in the whole house. So, and the floorboards reflect that they don't run parallel to the walls. It's a very strange thing, that, but it's because it's such an old set of foundations. And actually the cellars, although they're not spectacular, they are the old original part of the house. The other thing that's significant about this house is that it flooded really regularly. The brew, which runs just out there, is called the brew because it brews up. As soon as it's really heavy rain, it brews up, and the floods are extraordinary. There are markings all over the town about how high they go. And if I was in here during one of these really bad floods, I'd be knee deep in water now. And that's a good 15 feet off the road level. And it's really astonishing. Luckily, they built a dam now, about half a mile upstream, and we're protected from flooding. So my aunt got these made. They're columns painted with mirrors on the top, so that they have they reflect the light of a lamp or a candle. They're really nice. They're very practical, and we love them. We got 3 in here. Okay, so this is the dining room. Again, one of these really nice big windows that illuminates the room really well. The dining room table, I put one of my pots on, filled it with dried flowers, because it's too heavy and too big, and it gets too heavy if you put a lot of water in it. So dried flowers are a really nice solution to that. And I've formed a real love of dried flowers. These wonderful fronds of seed heads and these beautiful, very, very coloured dried flowers. It's amazing what you can get, actually. So I've really got into dried flowers. And these flowers are on the tablecloth of Malagasy. They're from Madagascar. We went out to Madagascar. Helena was writing a book about it. And we bought these fabrics. And this is really beautifully done. It's all hand-stitched. And some more ceramics. This is, again, from my daughter, Tallulah. And that's a bowl which she's illustrated. And she made that herself. Again, the chandelier from my grandmother, which really holds the room together, I think. And you can imagine with the candles lit, it's really something. This cupboard is a classic sort of thing that I love. Cupboards full of stuff. They've all got little stories. They're either old pots of mine, which didn't really work, but I couldn't possibly throw it away. Things that my wife's grandfather bought when he was working out in China, chess pieces. From Madagascar, a car made out of an old cooking oil can. And so it goes on. Skulls, Romanian pottery. Another book my wife did was about Romania. And this is a thing for smoking opium, I think, and covered in shark skin, which I think is called chagrin, isn't it? Something like that. And little wooden panels that I bought in India alongside those cows. the Nandis that I showed you in the sitting room. There's so many little things here. Tiny little silk slippers from China. Again, that would have been from Helena's grandfather. A little hand here showing the points of acupuncture, I think. Yeah, so much stuff. And that I think this cyclist is from Africa, probably Rwanda. And then painting by, this is a drawing by Eileen Cooper. She's now a Royal Academician, but I worked in the gallery, Benjamin Rhodes Gallery, for a bit, and he represented her, so I got one of these. That's paintings by Estelle Thompson. I used to represent Estelle. She now teaches at the Royal Academy. And these are two of her paintings from the 1980s. And these are some of my ceramics, and then more by Kevin de Schwarzy, and an acorn. And my wife's grandfather used to dive off Bermuda, and he found that bottle in the sea, an old rum bottle. Lovely old thing. This fireplace was already in the house, and this black marble is probably something which the doctor felt provided a bit of gravitas. The entrance to his surgery was there, so this archway had a door in it and led to his surgery, which is the next door house. This is a drawing by my daughter when she was a child of antlers when she was at school. So she was also drawing away at school like I was. And there's a nice ivory. This is a beautiful thing from China. My aunt bought these to put up and electrify, and put up in her house and have this little electric lights. But we thought we'd return them to being candles, and they go all the way around the room. And again, when you light them, the light is fantastic. It really is. It's beautiful. And these are such fun things with their arrows and their little twirly twiddly bits. This is it was a harpsichord. So this would have been where the keys were, and someone has transformed it into one of the drawers works and the other doesn't, and transformed it into a side table. But it's a fun thing to have, and surprisingly useful actually. We especially on Christmas Day, this is where we have Christmas dinner on this table here with the turkey here. And so this comes into its own then. These are by Lilith Piper. She's the granddaughter of John Piper, or the great-granddaughter of John Piper, and the granddaughter of Edward Piper, and the daughter of Luke Piper. A whole family history of artists, and this is her candlesticks, made from a cast of a fire, some sort of fire thing that her great-grandfather had made. So this is a John Piper cast and a Lilith Piper glaze. Yeah, these are nice chairs. I really, really like them. They weigh an enormous amount. And this is solid brass here and here. And these are handles for carrying, I presume. And I bought them in Lawrence's, the auction house in Somerset. And they would go with my aunt's chairs, and she had these painted. She probably did them herself because she was very keen on furniture and doing things to furniture and painting it and making it different. So they go really well together and form a really good set of chairs with the two armchairs of my aunt's here. This is a piece of furniture that my father, I think, would have bought. It's probably kind of 1820s, something like that. Lovely inlay. It's really nice, and because I've known it all my life, it has an extra sort of sense of specialness to me. As a child, I was one of those little boys that draws all the time, and the teachers at school recognised that, and they gave me paper, and I was allowed to do a lot of drawing. I suppose I've always been an artist, but actually when I went to university I did art history because it seemed more appropriate to try and find work in the art world. If you had an art history degree, it was a lot easier, and I really enjoyed art history at Manchester University. But the city was wonderful. Music, great music scene then. It was all Joy Division and Certain Ratio, great bands. This is in the 80s, early 80s. And then I went and worked in the art world for quite a long time, and I had my own gallery, Richard Pomeroy Gallery, now Purdy Hicks Gallery in South Ken in London. But the art world really didn't sort of suit me altogether, because it's actually all about selling other people's art, and I was still making my own art, even though I was working. So I gave up working for other galleries and also for myself in an art gallery, and started painting all the time. And I got a little studio in our London house, and it worked pretty well. But soon, of course, every artist just needs a bigger studio. It's always the case, isn't it? A bigger studio, you want to make bigger paintings. Anyway, moving down here was also very, very good for that. I had a garage here that was spare. We used that as a studio, and I painted there, and then I moved up into the roof of the garages. We built a studio on top of the garages, and that's where I'm now potting. The pottery took over when my daughter came back from New York. She'd done an internship out in New York for a printing, soft skull press, it was called, printing company, and she did pottery in the evenings. And she came back and said, "Daddy, I want to set up a pottery." And so we did, in the cellar here. And I put my fingers in the clay, and this is 10 years ago now, exactly 10 years ago. And I couldn't get them out of the clay. And that it wasn't long, maybe a year or two, when there was no time for painting, and the pottery just took over completely. And so really I've been full-time potter for 8 years or so. Now I'm really, really kind of getting into... those first years were kind of, how do I make these things out of porcelain? It's very hard, hand building in porcelain. Why I chose porcelain, I suppose, everybody is inspired by a challenge, aren't they? You're much more vigorous about completing a project if it's difficult, and it's much more compelling. And so making these things out of hand building in porcelain is really tricky. Anyway, I've spent years just learning how to do that, and then another couple of years or so getting together a group of objects which seemed right, and I really wanted people to use them. And I was really making them for my own use, so mugs and pint mugs and jugs and coffee pots, teapots. I'm a big fan of coffee and tea. It's got to be loose leaf tea, for instance, so teapot's really important. So yeah, I was making stuff for myself, and that turned out to be the sort of stuff other people wanted to buy. So it's gone really well. And just recently, I've felt that the homeware side of it is sort of ticking along. I've got a couple of people that help me out one day a week, Gail and Anthony, and I've felt liberated really to make my the next lot of things. And that is, for instance, a tower of rings of porcelain. They're about this size, and they're about 6 or 7 feet high once you've got them all up, and it's 12 rings of porcelain. I put one up in the garden a few weeks ago. So yeah, I'm going back to, I think I'm going back to being an artist, which is so exciting actually. So I'd just like to introduce my wife, Helena, and she is going to talk about some of the things in this room.
So this is the kitchen. The kitchen itself was made by a friend called David Craigie, who has a business nearby, and it needs a lot of work, so don't look too closely. We deliberately didn't put cupboards on these walls because we wanted to have pictures. And this is a drawing by an artist called John Greenwood, and it is sort of a collection of little gourds and monsters and creatures worming their way out of strange vessels, and we like it very much.
Yeah, it's
funny,
a fancy thing.
a fantasy picture.
John's done really well and has been bought and supported by Charles Saatchi.
Here above the cooker we have a collection of ceramics. This is an Indian piece, but these are all from a particular monastery in Romania called Jerez, and they are created on a wheel, and the artist drips the glaze on through a sheep's horn, and as he turns the wheel, so these little loops of colour come down onto these dishes. And this one and this one are by a kind of famous master from this Jerez monastery. And we collected some of them there, and some were given to us by Romanian friends. And then these we bought in Spain on our honeymoon.
Yeah, in the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
We've got an Aga.
We have an Aga,
Which
which
we
we love.
love.
This is part of the family. And when it gets turned off this year for a lot of the summer, all of the spring and summer, it was so hot, we really miss it. And I work upstairs and I get very cold sitting at my desk, and I come down here and I just hug the Argo, lift up the lids and warm my hands. In fact, I've just been doing that. And these are Richard's tea and coffee pots. This is a particularly beautiful one that I love. This is our teapot. It's like a little woman going to the market in her bonnet. Don't you think? And here we have some of Richard's bowls, these very beautiful jewel-like bowls, which we'll have for our soup.
Specially commissioned by Helena.
Commissioned by me because I love them so much.
Because you wanted the colour inside.
I did. This amazing jug, vase I should say, not jug, by Richard Pomeroy, with these, well, you explain, Richard.
They're
These are
nonagons. They're nine-sided, little nine-sided template that I made and then have used that to create a decoration all over. And they kind of randomly form patterns, and then they fall out again. I mean, 9 is such a special number, and I just felt that it would be a good thing, and it has worked out really well. This is by Takashi Yasuda, a ceramic artist. He worked in England. I think actually he's still alive. I think he's in China now teaching, but he worked in England for years and had a show in London. And about 40, 50 years ago, I bought this. This is your grandfather, isn't it?
Yes, he was governor of Bermuda, and this was given to him as a memento. It's lovely Bermuda cedar wood. So this is a piece of alder wood. And a couple of years ago, Richard and I were with some friends kayaking on a river in Norfolk, and we stopped for a picnic, and an alder tree fell on top of us, and we narrowly avoided death, and this huge tree crashed onto our 2 kayaks, and Richard was particularly in the firing line, very nearly was. I mean, if he'd turned round to the right instead of to the left, he would not be here now. Anyway, so Richard then had this little brush made so we can brush the surfaces from a local brush maker who lives up the road, and using alder wood. And he had two made, one for us and one for the friends. And when he gave it to the friends, they said, "Oh yes, brush with death." And so that's what this is.
It was a brush with death, it's true.
We quite recently changed this room. This had a sort of 1980s extension onto it, which was divided up into 3 little funny rooms with a flat roof, and was a bit ropey. So we took it down and replaced it and opened it all out. And it's been really wonderful. We've got glass all around, and it leads through directly now what used to be a very windy passageway is now our little conservatory. We call it very grandly Kew Gardens. And Kew Gardens then takes us through to the swimming pool, which is just beyond. And we use it all year round. We love this space and enjoy the garden from here. This painting over here is by an artist called Peter Bunting, and that Richard gave me when we got married instead of an engagement ring. I didn't get an engagement ring, I got a picture instead, which was very nice. And everyone always loves that picture, the wind in the trees, the wind in the corn.
The little man holding his hat down.
Just a tiny dash of red over on the right, like a Gainsborough, which is what he always did as well. I always had that little dash of a different colour somewhere. And then this is a painting of cliffs in Devon by my sister, an artist, Helena Drysdale. And underneath it, a drawing of the same place. And a little etching by our daughter Helena Pomeroy of a little house with the smoke coming out. And then over here we have a huge number of bits and pieces. We have a very special black cat teapot, which was given to us when we got married by the witnesses at our wedding. We just asked some passers-by if they would be our witnesses. And they said yes. Well, we found them in a little antique market. And they very sweetly agreed to be witnesses, and so came back 2 days later and gave us this, which is a teapot. And somehow this comes off. I can't remember how it works. Anyway, there it is. But now that Richard makes so many mugs, we don't really use any other things. This is from Portugal. We used to go quite often to Portugal and come back with these lovely ceramics. And then here we have 2 very splendid Richard Pomeroy jugs. This again, that same sort of celadon glaze. And here it's got its slash of kintsugi gold where it's been mended. And then here we have a whole cabinet full of yet more stuff. Some of these things we bought in Japan. We went to a couple of pottery towns where they have potters who are they are considered to be national treasures, and they value their craftsmen in Japan much more than we do. And we were lucky enough to, we were able to have tea in little tea houses and then buy the little pot that we'd just drunk our tea out of, which was very special. This is a lacquerware, also from Japan, very lightweight.
Oh, it's something by Henry there, isn't there, Henry?
Yes, here's
An old mug.
very sweet mugs made by Richard's brother, who is also now taking his pottery very seriously. And this is something we found in the garden, Richard found. We think it's Roman glass. And he then gave it this little ceramic base, gilded. And I think haven't you taken it to the museum?
I took it to someone who knew, and he thought it might well be Roman, yeah.
So there was a
Little scent
Roman
bottle.
temple just outside Bruton on the hill nearby, and they found all sorts of votive offerings there, and there are graves of a community of holy women, and it's on the hill just outside Bruton called Creech Hill. And so it's possible that there were Romans here, and this is a busy river. This is an amazing vase that I got in Japan. It's basically a sort of sphere with a hole punched in the top, and that's how it's become a vase. There's something very satisfying about this. And it's been fired in these huge walk-in kilns, which are like sort of like a crypt. And they would fire them about a couple of times a year and pile up dozens and dozens of these vessels and bits of pottery and fire it all at the same time. And so the glaze is just created by the fire, so you don't know what you're going to get.
So this is the garden, and as you can see, it's got this sort of nice flow between the kitchen and the garden. And here is our lemon tree, which we saved because the person who sold it to us, it had got covered in all sorts of scale insects and stuff like that. And when it was really pathetic plant. And now, years later, it's covered in lemons and they're great for gin and tonics. We love it, absolutely love it. It's a kind of friend of the family, in fact. The garden, when we got here, there were huge Leylandii trees right here, right by the house. Goodness. And so we took down a lot of stuff, but 4 of them we kept because inside that cube of green Leylandii is a room. It's our tree house. So at some point we'll go up there. I keep the lawn fairly long grass. I like to have insect life as much as possible, actually. And there are a lot of frogs from a pond we've got at the end of the garden and newts. So I like to keep the grass long and mow these paths through and keep the edges neat as well. So that it looks smart, I suppose. So it looks neat. The beds are quite unkempt. I like it like that. The goldenrod here, there's nice and interesting when it's stopped flowering and the seed comes along and they're still billowing in the wind. That's how I think a garden should be. Plants in all their stages, from young to post-flowering and seeding. And also there's quite a lot of things like teasel, which just come up on their own. And they're magnificent like that. And then when they're fully grown, and we've got some further up there, those teasel heads are absolutely wonderful when the goldfinches come and feed off the seeds, which they do. It's amazing. These are lovely. I don't know what they are. They've always been here since before we bought the house. But they flower at this time of year, which is just so unusual. And they're such a brilliant colour. They're related to Jerusalem artichoke. We've got some Jerusalem artichoke downstairs, down below, in the garden down below. And they also flower like this, but not nearly so well. But they've got the same sorts of roots, but they're not edible. This is a wild rose that just planted itself here. And again, I like the rose hips. It's for that I keep this rose and allow it to inhabit this tree, an apple tree. This is Troisia, and it's going to flower again. I'm pretty sure this is the second flowering it's had this year. It's been an astonishing year, amazing year for fruit. This is a quince tree. It's absolutely laden with fruit. And I'm going to make quince vodka with it. And Helena is going to do quince jam and a quince marmalada, a Portuguese thing where they put gelatin in with it and you can cut it into slices and eat it with cheese. It's delicious. Yeah, these quinces are, not only are they really good, but goodness, that is a beautiful fruit. Their colour is amazing. They're hard and they stay hard. It's not the sort of thing you can crunch on, but they're beautiful to look at. Again, this, I like to allow it to seed and to, you enjoy the seed heads as much as you do the flowers. This is a rhuce. These are spectacular trees. Sumac is part of the same family. These are seed heads that stay on the tree for much more than a year. So some of the seed heads belong to the previous year's flowering, and these leaves turn the most fabulous yellows and oranges. I really like these trees. They're perfect shade trees. They lose their leaves in the autumn so that you aren't it's not too shady. Now beyond is a new thing for me. I call them totems, and it's rings of porcelain which I fix to a post. Of course, the colour combinations are whatever I like. I can do what I like, but I particularly like pink and celadon blue together. I think they look beautiful together, and I put the darker colours down at the bottom and cap them with a white, a bit like my own mugs, which are always capped in white at the rim of a mug. So these are called totems, and they're fixed to a post that I've put into the ground, and so they really are good and solid, stable, and it should be here for many years. These are iris, which the thing about iris is that they flower magnificently, but they do leave really interesting leaf for the whole of the rest of the year. But I thought that maybe this bed needs a bit of height, so I've got hollyhocks here, which at the right time of year flower really high and absolutely fantastic. And I've planted, one is a couple of years old and it's now producing a lot of flower, but I've planted new ones this year and they'll do their thing over the years. This is our pond, and this fence is to keep our grandson out of the pond. But the pond is really important for wildlife. It attracts insects, particularly dragonflies and damselflies, but all sorts of flies, mayflies, and also frogs, newts, everything. And I really, really enjoy this. And I come out here and have my cup of coffee. There's a really big dragonfly over there, an emperor, I'm pretty sure. And these water lilies look wonderful at the right time of year. Actually, they do have a very long flowering season, but they need a lot of sun to open up. And that is a wisteria, which goes all the way from the quince, round to here. One plant, and in the spring it just looks amazing. The florets coming down, absolutely amazing. A lot of buddleia. We like buddleia because of the amount of insects it brings into the garden. And it's got quite a long flowering season. And actually the birds do eat the seeds. This Japanese anemone, again, a long flowering season. These are buds and these are seed heads. They've got a lot of flowering yet to come. Really nice plant. And in a wetter year, of course we've had a drought this year, and so they're quite short. A lot of flower, but quite short. But in a wetter year, they're 6 foot. And these, euphorbia, they stay looking like this all year round. And then they flower in the spring. Really magnificent plants. And up here is the tree house. It's a room I made in these 4 Leylandii. I just cut out the central branches and put planks down, and there are seats around here too. But it's a lovely space to be in. So this is my pottery. This is where everything is made. I roll out the clay using normal rolling pins. Most of them are just absolutely standard rolling pins. And I roll it out like pastry. And these are some of the rings for those totems that I showed you out in the garden. So we roll out the clay and we make these things on the surface here. Here's a tankard drying under the plastic. The porcelain is very tricky and it cracks here so often. So just today, I got this fridge, old fridge, and I use this, I'm going to use this to dry everything in, because it's going to dry in this very enclosed atmosphere. It's going to dry very, very slowly, and that will help with the cracking. So this is my new tool, and I'm really excited to use it. Yeah, we make them here. They dry here. Once we're sure that they're okay, they go onto those shelves, and then we put them in the kiln for the bisque firing. So this shelf up here, it shows the history of my making. So back in 2015, I would have been really proud of this. An egg cup. I signed it. It's got 2015 on it. And I was using traditional colours all the time then. I didn't really get into the colour. I didn't really know what was available. I completely self-taught. I never went to art school. I just sort of did it all myself. I would have learned in 2 weeks what actually it took me over a year to learn. But to do it yourself means that you understand it really intimately. And I think it's been very useful for me to do that. I started using colour a lot more. And then by this period, and this is 2017, I was really getting into the colour. And by 2018, I was doing things which are recognisably what I'm still doing now. And these paintings are from when I was 16, 17, as a schoolboy. And I put pots in the paintings. And so I thought that it would be really appropriate to have that in my pottery here. And these are some much more recent drawings. A raven and beech trees. So this is my stockroom. This is where everything that's made in the pottery comes, so that I've got, firstly, something to show people who visit, which I get quite often, which I really like. And also it's my, they're my stock picking. When people buy it from my website, I'll come out and pack them up here. These are all the teapots, etc., and vases and things like that. And inside here are all the mugs and the jugs. These are all the colours that I use, 15 colours. And then there's, at the end, black and white and transparent glaze. It goes from little espresso mugs right the way through to pint mugs here and big tankards. And the colours are all really vivid, and I think colour is a really crucial part of life. And it's used for everything, from symbolism to emotion. It's such a powerful thing. So I like to incorporate an enormous amount of colour. The dipping process means that the glaze gets really a dense covering on the B square and comes out as a very a strong colour. If you're painting on, it's a very different process. This I paint on the wax to exclude the glaze from the places where I don't want it. And then I dip it in, and so the glaze goes on to where I haven't waxed it. And that enables me to have all sorts of patternings, and I can also do houses and trees and landscapes on these pots. And it's been a fairly new thing, and I've really enjoyed the whole process. It's not always about colour. Sometimes the form is more important, or you want to emphasize the form by just glazing it in a simple, this is actually a transparent glaze that's matte, and it feels like skin. It's the most wonderful thing. But by not putting colour on it, you're really just emphasizing the form of it. And this is a coffee pot, which I really like. I made it quite recently. We moved here to Somerset because actually I was brought up just a few miles away in a village called Nunney. And Helena, my wife, her parents lived just a few miles away as well. They bought a house about 10 years before we moved in here. So we got to know the area really well. And then when we moved in here, as I said, we walked in through the front door and said, this is right for us. And it did feel perfect. And it's partly because the house itself has hugely thick walls. I think that's important. And it feels very solid and like it's been here forever, and it will stay here forever. And you're just sort of in here for your moment. And it feels like a house which encloses you and makes you feel welcome. Yeah, it's been very special to move in here. And I have felt very liberated creatively here, very liberated. It's partly because of the house itself, and also because the landscape around here is stupendous. And that's wonderful. If you feel that nature is kind of out there and it's there and welcoming to you, you feel that power of nature deeply in what I do. It's always been about nature.
We've had such a lovely time showing you around our home, but time's up. We're going to head off now, and we'll see you around. So, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.